Hey friends, before we dive into this week's episode, just a heads up. Our podcast talks about suicide, sexual abuse, and other trauma, and some of what you hear may be triggering, so please listen with care. This is The Survivors, real stories, raw conversations, and the truth about what it means to keep going after the hardest things. We're so glad you're here. Let's keep surviving together.
You know, I've been thinking a lot lately, and I get like this at this time of year. Been thinking a lot lately about the life that I have, which I love, grateful beyond words, right? Versus the life that maybe I thought I was going to have, which I don't think a lot of people talk about often. And the reason why I feel this way, why this is like something that's in my thoughts around this time of year, is because I now am in a new routine in my life these last few years where I am only with my family, when I say my family, I mean Dave and I and our kids are all together under the same roof twice a year. And that, as a mom of two daughters who I'm super close with, my two daughters are my best friends in the world. I mean, excluding Dave, obviously, but I never in my wildest dreams imagined that I would have the majority of my relationship with one of my children through a phone screen.
Yeah.
That is not the life I thought I would have. We are from such a close family. We are such a connected, bonded family unit. And around this time of the year, I actually feel like this incredible sense of loss. Like, we just got back from Japan. It's where I've been the last 3 years in December for the holidays. And I always have this incredible sense of fulfillment when I'm there. Like, that's my happiest place, when everybody's under the same roof. But then when I leave, it's like full on active grief. It is. And I'm glad we're talking. I know we were going to talk about this today, and I'm glad. It's like, I'm not grieving a person. I'm not grieving like a single moment or an event. Like, I guess it was just grieving a life that I thought would be very different. Like, had this little image of all of us kind of living close together and sort of nearby, or at least present in a way that if I had to, I could hop on a train or, take a quick flight if I had to. And that's not what it is. It's very different.
And so when you say through a screen, is you guys have FaceTime phone calls every day?
Every day.
Okay.
Every day. I'm really lucky in that way. Like, I think about what I have, and I know that I'm probably, honestly, a lot closer than a lot of moms with their children who are living. So we live just north of Boston. I have so many friends whose kids live in the city or maybe live in New York, and they talk to them like once every week or once every couple weeks. And they see them maybe almost as infrequently as I get to see one of my kids. And so I do consider myself lucky that my daughter, literally 5 days a week, she's a teacher, and when she's on her way to school, she calls us in the morning. It's nighttime for us, but she calls us every day like a religion.
I love that.
Which I love. And it's amazing. And it's a quick call. It's like less than 10 minutes, but we get connected. How was your night? How's your day? What's going on? Quick pulse check. And then we catch up at night or on the weekends. But like, I just think that this is such a hard kind of grief to name, because there's like no definition of it. There's no beginning or ending. There isn't like a funeral. There wasn't like a point that you can say something changed. It's like the big picture just didn't end up the way you thought it would be in your head, and it just unfolded in a different way. Has that been, do you connect with that?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
100%. You know, thinking that my life was going to go a certain way, and almost nothing in my life has panned out the way I had planned it was going to go. Yeah. And it's incredibly hard, and painful at times, especially as I've now no longer have any contact with my family, and realizing we're such a big part of each other's lives for many, many years. But then as time has gone, and it's just, at least me, I've faded into the background for many people, and In fact, I wanted to tell you that the fact that you speak to your children every day, that's not that's not usual.
Oh, I know.
And in fact, when you and I first, started to getting to know each other, and then we were texting every single day, and you wanted to know what was going on in my day-to-day life, that was very foreign to me. I had never had that kind of a relationship with what I consider, you and I kind of have like a maternal kind of, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so it just was very foreign to me that somebody that I would consider kind of to be a mother figure to me would want to know the day to day.
Let's call it an older sister. Come on now.
Okay. I know.
I'm just kidding. You
are an older, you're definitely not old enough to be my mother.
Of course not. Crazy. It's crazy talk, man. Come on.
Oh, she's not. But that's just the kind of energy that Lisa has, is just very warming, welcoming and warm, and just, she cares. And that was just not something that I was used to. And, like when I started my new job a couple of months ago, she was like, call me when you get out of your work, I want to hear about your first day. And I was, what? This person wants to know about my first day at work of somebody other than my husband. So yeah, it's, I have to say that I love that you guys have that in your family. And I hope that that's something that I can have with my children too. Where we're involved in in their day to day and things like that. And I have to say, if my kids move away from me, that's going to be hard.
I know. It's funny. It's like just this morning, was it this morning? Yeah. This morning or last night, I think. So I have, for anyone who's listened to the podcast, that I have a daughter who lives in Japan, who's my oldest, been there for 3 years, is just got engaged, actually. And she and her fiance are going to be building a life in Japan. So that means that is the normal. That is the new normal. That is the rhythm of our life. And the way that our family unit interacts is they come home in the summer to Boston and we go there in December, and hopefully Dave and I can sneak a trip in the spring, because there's absolutely no way on this earth I can be separated from one of my kids for 7-8 months at a time. I just can't do it. So we're, where there's a will, there's a way. We'll figure it out. But I mean, I'm very, very lucky that I have that kind of relationship, and I don't take it for granted for a second. But I was talking about it with my younger daughter, who lives 4 miles away, and she's just like, Mom, that if I ever move, like, she and her boyfriend are very serious, and we know that they're planning on getting married. And she's like, if we move somewhere, like, you and Dad have to come with us, right? Like, that's it. Oh, she fully is like, you have to, and it's really sweet, because we're very, very, very close with her boyfriend, and her boyfriend says the same things. His family, he's about to have a complete shift, kind of like what we had happen, where our child moved away. Now his parents, his family's from Ghana, and his parents are actually moving home to Ghana after like 30 something years of living in the US. So
wow.
He will be here, and his parents will be the ones to move away. So we're all talking about, all of us who are here in the States are talking about, well, we'll just have like a compound, and we'll all just kind of, wherever we are, we want to make sure that we're close together. And he says the same thing now. She says, no, you guys are coming with us wherever we go. You'll come with us. So yeah, it's interesting when you take a step back and you look at kind of where you're at and where your imagination may have been at one point about, like, I imagine my life to be this, or when your kids are little, you never expect that your kid is going to say, I'm going to live in another hemisphere. You don't. I mean, I know there are millions of people out there who do that, but in my case, I never expected it until, she was of the age where she started saying, this is what I think I want to do with my life. But this conversation isn't just about that. It's not just about like what happens when your kid moves around, to the other side of the world. This is also like look at my mom. What happens when my mother was 40 when I was born. And then, no, my mother was 40 when my father passed away. She was 30 when I was born. My mother turned 40, and 2 months later, my father died. My father took his life. So talk about living a life that you never imagined. Like my parents had been married for 18 years. They were so happily married, such a beautiful couple, no sign, no signal that anything was wrong. And then all of a sudden my dad's not there. And now my mom is a single parent raising me all by herself.
Right.
Or the person whose spouse one day says, this isn't what I want anymore. And they leave.
Yeah.
That's why that's grief. That's all grief and loss. And it's, we all have these assumptions about the life that we're going to lead, about family closeness. Look at you, or where you're going to live in relation to your family, or traditions, or togetherness, and things like that. And when reality looks really different, it can be really, really disorienting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, people don't understand that when you have to take a step back for your own mental sanity from family members, which is what I've had to do. My husband and I, we chose to move from Utah, which is where I grew. My entire life, 30 years, lived in Salt Lake County, Utah. And we wanted something different. We had 2 little kids. We had wanted to always live by the ocean. We'd picked up, without knowing, a soul, and we moved to Virginia Beach, Virginia, across the country. It was beautiful. It was great. We loved it. Slowly over time, I lost contact with my family as I, stopped putting in the work to keep the relationship active. And I realized, oh, wow, I'm the one that's keeping these relationships going. And then one by one, and then I didn't have a relationship with anybody. And then COVID happened. The world changed. And we ended up moving, and a whole other set of circumstances changed. We ended up back in Utah in 2022. And I thought, and by then I'd repaired most of the relationships. Everything was good. And I thought, this will be different. We're all grown adults. We're in different places. The trauma bonds didn't seem to be there anymore. And then, we lost multiple family members over the course of 5 months. And I really honestly thought that after we had, then buried now 4 brothers to suicide, we lost our dad to cancer, I thought we could get over our shit and really come together as a family. And then I really realized, I was like, oh, wow, we're just repeating the same cycles over and over and over again. And then I realized I've got to get out. And we had been back in Utah for 9 months, and just a casual conversation with friends. And George had mentioned that he would move back to Virginia in a heartbeat. And I hadn't told him that I'd been having those feelings for months. And I was like, oh, so you would consider moving back to Virginia? He's like, absolutely. And I said, okay, well, I've been feeling it too. And I said, well, we need to go. Because if I stay here in Utah around my toxic family, I said, I won't make it to 40. And for what you may not know if you haven't heard of previous episodes, but I have survived 3 suicide attempts in the early 2000s for various reasons. A lot of it stemming from, childhood trauma, things like that. But I know for me, and I've learned enough about my triggers to know that my family are huge triggers for me, and the same toxic cycles that we seem to have. And so I just was very honest and real with myself, and I said, we got to go. And we've been back here in Virginia for a year now, and lost another brother 9 months ago, brother number 5, to suicide. I flew home, handled the funeral arrangements with my mother, all the things. And what do you know? Same toxic cycles returned. And so I've just really decided that it's just not worth my mental peace to continue to beg for love from people who don't actually care. Blood does not mean that they care. It just means you share blood.
Yeah. Well, you and I talked about this before we ever even recorded today, about how it is so unfortunate in so many situations where you can't pick your family. But on the other side of that, we are so fortunate that we do get to choose our friends in a lot of cases. And in so many cases, what we gain by choosing those people who intentionally show up, who want to bring out the best in us, who want to support us. By being able to do that, we kind of counteract what we couldn't get from the people that we love. And what I just said is what we're talking about here. It's when our life doesn't turn out the way we expected it to, or the way we just naturally assume that it will, because, oh, hey, we have a family. So we naturally assume that our family will always support us and be there for us and lift us up and, and be there to catch us when we fall. And in your case, like, you and I come from really, really drastically different families. I mean, I'm an only child. You are a child of 20. That's right there. That's a little different. You were raised in a polygamy cult. I was not, raised by just my mom and my dad, and in a, affluent middle class town north of Boston. Very difficult than being in a compound with, fundamentalist Latter-day Saints community, the way you were. And yet you still, when you were a kid, I'm sure, kind of expected that your family would be there for you. I mean, I know it was a tough upbringing for you, and you have a lot of trauma and a lot of baggage that you carry from your childhood, but I'm sure somewhere in there you've still kind of figured out that everybody would support you or be there for you. Like, you never expected to be estranged.
Looking for mental health resources that actually fit who you are and where you come from? Then you need to check out the HelpHUB. It's not another generic wellness site. It's a free, inclusive online platform built for real people living real lives. People managing stress, anxiety, depression, trauma and abuse, grief or suicide loss. At the HelpHUB, you'll find the resources, tools, treatment options, and trauma-informed content you need in the moment without having to dig through endless tabs or start from scratch. It's your place to land, to take a breath, and to find exactly what you need when you need it most. Visit thehelphub.co, where the help you need is just a click away.
No, I didn't. And I'm number 13 of 20. And a lot of my siblings had children at very young ages. They got married very young. They had children very young. Mm-hmm. And, I was super involved with them in raising their children and being there, babysitting, doing all the things, spending day to day. In fact, I worked for one of my dad and my sister went into business together, and I worked for them. So I was there in their home office every day for 5 years.
Wow.
And so I was an everyday part of her children's lives. And so I thought, for sure that, and I wasn't going to have children at first, but then we ultimately decided to have children. And I noticed there was a big difference in the way people showed up for other people in my family versus other people, like certain, it was almost very cliquey, and mm-hmm. the favoritism. And I was like, oh, okay. So, and I realized once I started having kids, my kids were really young, because I had 2 kids in 2 years. I was like, oh, okay, so I'm not going to get the same support. Okay, got it.
Yep.
So I learned very early on in my motherhood journey that it was going to be up to me. I was not going to get that same level of support. And then I was like, so what's the point in staying? I'm the close family ties and bonds that I thought we were going to have and carry on with our children, and, them being a part of each other's lives, and their aunts and uncles, actually caring what goes on or showing up to sporting events, whatever. I was like, what's the point in staying? There's no point in continuing to stay here. Mm-hmm. And that's when we decided to just go off on a new adventure. And it was scary, I'm not going to lie, but by goodness, if I did not find some amazing people along the way and have some amazing adventures.
But what, and I'm so glad that you did. I'm so glad that positive part happened to you. What were the hardest parts of leaving behind the expectation of, I came from a big family, I want my own little unit now, you and George and your kids, to be a part of that extended family? Like, what was it like to have to break away from that? What was the hardest part of that? Or was there a hard part?
It was basically the last year that we were there that I really just slowly pulled back altogether. So it was a gradual pulling back and withdrawing because I knew it was going to be hard. The hardest part, though, and where I really cried, was when I had to say goodbye to my dad. And, because my dad was always like, he's a handyman, he was a general contractor, he loved to help around the house or whatever project you had, he was there, 100%. After having a baby for all of his daughters, he's like, I get to bring you your first meal after the baby's delivered, just things like that.
Yeah, that's sweet.
And so that was really hard, knowing that I wasn't going to get to see my dad regularly. By then, he had moved to southern Utah, so I only saw him, every few months, but still very active. But the other one that was really hard was saying goodbye to Jenny's youngest son, Logan, because I, essentially helped raise him the first 5 years of his life because I was there every day working. And so realizing that I wasn't going to get to see him and be a part of his life regularly. And he was also very close with my children. That was hard. That was almost like saying goodbye to one of my children. And that really, I cried. And he was like 6, so he didn't understand.
Yeah.
And why is Auntie crying and saying goodbye and things like that. And so that was the hardest part for me, was not being involved in the children's lives that I had grown to cherish and enjoy being around. And
yeah. I think any kind of loss of what we expected is just learning how to hang on to the reality of what things are and find the beauty and the joy and the adventure and the love of what is. I just think it can be so hard. I mean, I know for myself, having expectations, and I try not to have a lot of expectations, but there are certain things that you just kind of inherently have expectations about that, that
right.
you just don't expect that you're going to pick up one day and just move from where your entire huge extended family is and never look back because it's too toxic to look back. And for me, I never expected my kid would move, 7,000 miles away. And, now I think about the future of, well, what if I have grandchildren? And how will that look? And I know my grandmother lived with us. My mother's grandmother lived with her. We've always had that kind of a family structure where everybody's been very close by each other and everybody's been very involved in everybody's lives. And I grieve that. Like, I feel the grief of that. I don't want to. And I wish I didn't. I wish I knew how not to, but it's really, really hard. So I just try and stay positive and stay focused on the things that I know I have, that I know that my daughter doesn't go to work a single day of the week without calling us. And she lives that far away. And I try to think about the positives as much as I can and just be here and be present with what is versus, trying to hold on to an idea of something that I thought would be. But I mean, I really do think that we all have to give ourselves the ability to miss or mourn or whatever word you want to use the life we thought we might have had. Especially those people whose lives were abruptly changed because someone passed away suddenly or a job was lost and all of a sudden you had to move or there was some kind of trauma. Like, we're allowed to sit in that for a while. We have to.
Absolutely. I mean, and mourning the loss of a life that you thought you'd have. For example, I'm actually in the midst of, right now, my husband and I are moving for the 9th time in 10.5 years. 3 of those have been cross country. I am so tired of moving. I never thought in a million years that I will have moved this times as a grown adult. especially being that I lived in the house that my dad built for the first 15 years of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And here we have, and trust me, I feel guilt beyond you would not believe, dragging my kids across so many different states and doing all these things and not giving them a quote unquote stable childhood.
Well, that could be debatable. We can debate that all day long, because if you and your husband, you and George are creating that stability wherever you are, like that it doesn't matter. Like, the roof that's over your head, in theory, shouldn't matter. You can have people moving all over and having absolutely terrible, or the other way around. You can have people staying in one place, being completely permanent where they are, and being terrible parents and having terrible relationships with your kids, and people are unhappy on that end. Or, you've got people like you and George who are creating a loving home no matter what home you're in.
That's true.
But I do understand what you're saying. I do understand what you're saying. We moved around a lot too when the kids were little. I mean, we probably moved around 6 or 7 times by the time we settled in our house of 20 years.
Yeah.
So I get it. I get that feeling.
Yeah. And just, I thought we'd be living in our house. We'd be raising our kids in the same house, and they'd have all these memories and within that house, and they don't get to have that. And that's really hard for me to realize, that they're memories of, because you look back at your childhood home and it reminds you of things, and you go back to that childhood home over and over again. So it's just, unfortunately, circumstances. No, we're not military. It's just circumstantial that we've moved that many times. And right now we're moving. It'll be my shortest move. We're moving across the street.
You can basically chuck things from the front lawn into the other house, right?
Yeah, it's across the street and down one.
Okay.
So yesterday we started the process and cleared out the garage and things like that. But yeah, we bought little, we have some wagons. Everything was just getting tossed into wagons, and just one cart, load full at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And, but it's definitely where, you get settled into a home and you're like, okay, we can get settled, especially with everything that we've been through. And it's just really hard. So our landlord, who is now our friend, I'm like, please, can we stay here until we build our house? Because, we're finally here where we live currently in Virginia. Like, this is home for us. We want to find some land, build a house. And so I was like, please do not kick us out of this house. And it really just is circumstantial that the house we're living in now, it's the person that owns it is military, and he's coming back. So he wants his house back.
Oh, so ungrateful.
So
you were taking such good care of it. The nerve.
I know. But yeah, it's definitely a grieving process of, dang it, we don't get to have all these wonderful memories within a solid household that the kids will remember. And I thought we would be halfway to having our house paid off by now. And after 15 years of owning, homes, or, it's just a lot of different things where you have to look at the life that you dreamed of having. And then you're like, oh crap, circumstances change, which they often do, and derails your plans. And really just learning to be flexible and just roll with it.
Yeah, it's that. And it's also intentionally being grateful about what you do have. And a lot of the time, honestly, too, even though, like, just because we didn't maybe follow the path we expected that we would follow or that we wanted to follow, doesn't mean that what we have and the path we're on now isn't an even better path for us, isn't a more joyful path. Like, one thing doesn't have to cancel out the other. Like, we're still allowed at the end of the day to kind of miss or mourn or grieve the kind of life we thought we would have versus where we're at. But we can also love the life you're living. I think it's really just a whole conversation about being present. Just being present and about allowing yourself to feel the good bits and the bad bits, and recognize that it's life and not everything is going to fall into place the way we expect or want it to.
Right. And along the lines of what you said, being grateful for what you have, because I've looked back and I'm, I'm like, okay, if we hadn't moved this time or done that, we wouldn't have met people that are still in our lives that we never would have met. The kids would have never met these certain friends. In fact, one of them is two boys that we met, and they spent a week with us during the summer. They were just here for 4 days over the holidays. And had we not moved 4 times in 18 months during 2020 and 2022, we never would have met them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and again, you know, finding the positive. But I get, you know, we talk about this a lot, just allowing yourself to feel whatever it is you're going to feel,
Mm-hmm.
and allowing it to move through you, and to be grateful for what we have, but still allowing space for the sadness and the grief for what was not.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You just reminded me of, like, the perfect example of all of this is one of my daughters, is the one who lives abroad. So I don't know how much I've told you about this situation, and I really don't talk that often about it on the podcast or write about it, but my daughter, when she graduated from college in 2019, was supposed to move abroad. She was supposed to move to Japan, which is where she ultimately ended up going. And she was supposed to teach English as a second language, do that for a couple of years, and then potentially go off. And she was in the communications field at the time, and do her thing and dive into her career. She was supposed to leave right after she graduated, but her group was so big that they split it into 2 sections, and one of them went right after graduation and the other one went in March of 2020. She was the one who was chosen to go March of 2020. So she had her ticket, she had a lease for her apartment, she had a job that she had committed to, and the day before she was supposed to leave, they shut down the borders, and that completely dissolved. And it took her 4 years to get to where she ultimately wanted to go. But the interesting thing about, and this is, talk about like grieving a loss of your life that you dreamt of. I mean, she put so much heart and soul and effort into learning the language and getting her life organized in Japan from the US to try and build a life for herself. And then in a matter of a day, this dream that she had had for years just poof, it just evaporated. And I mean, it was a rough time. This was right in the middle of the pandemic. All 4 of us were in the house. She was now prevented, and we were the ones. I mean, we took the hit. She wanted to go, and we were the ones who said, the world is not a world where you should be taking this chance and going. And ultimately she stayed, and it was a rough time for her because she was in deep, deep grief over the life that she dreamt of. And somehow she just, she sat in it for as long as she had to sit in it, and then eventually kind of found her way again to a new path. And okay, if I couldn't go this way, I'm going to go that way, and then set her sights again. And 4 years later, she ended up there. And 4 years later, she ended up in a different area. She wasn't in the same area. It was because she had waited all that time and ended up where she ended up that she ultimately ended up meeting her boyfriend, who is now her fiance. She ended up finding a love for teaching again, changed her whole degree program, is now a teacher, is now marrying the man that she adores. And not all setbacks turn out the same way, but in her case, it did. And there was a lot of grief and a lot of pain. But this is what I was saying. This is proof of what I was saying before, that sometimes what does happen, even though we get derailed, can turn out to be better than what we had imagined. So in her case, that is what the outcome was. But oh my God, did she sit in it for the longest time?
Yeah.
Because everything she thought, she was going to be doing in her life blew up in front of her face.
Yeah. I'm sure that was incredibly hard for her, especially when you're so young and you're filled with so much like hope and dreams and all the things, and that just was shattered in a matter of a day for her. And it's such a rough time. Oh my gosh, but I'm so proud of her for sticking with it, and
so are we,
making sure that she fulfilled that dream.
Yeah, so are we. I mean, she is proof that, she imagined that life for the longest time, and grieving that future, that even though it was an imagined future, that was real grief. Like, that was as debilitating as any other grief I could ever have imagined. But she found her way through, and she let it be what it was, and it was a shit show for a long time. And, accepting it doesn't erase the pain of it. It just makes space for you to change direction. And that's what I think is so important for anybody listening to this conversation. Like, you can still feel that pain of loss of what you didn't have, but as long as there's a little bit of space for hope, that you can find a way to move forward, and you can do it, and sometimes be beautifully surprised by what happens on the other side.
Right. And realizing that it may not be right now, like you might not get to have that, but maybe later.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where one door closes, a window opens. So many times I've had that happen in my life where I was dead set on something and it didn't work out, and I just had to be patient. And then a whole other avenue opened up for me in ways beyond what I could have imagined, in such a beautiful way.
That is the best way, I think, to finish this conversation, because at the end of the day, if we just give ourselves permission to sit in it and have a little bit of faith that things will change, they will. They will, and they could absolutely change for the better in ways we never expect.
Absolutely. I love that.
Amen. Amen. Hey, I love you too, by the way.
I love you.
Aw.
More than you know.
Oh, I do know. It's right back to you, believe me. Let's come back and do this all over again next week.
Deal.
Can we do that? And you know what next week actually will be, believe it or not?
What?
It is going to be our season recap episode, because we're done with season 3 next week.
Nuh-uh.
Yeah, huh?
Are you for real?
I am absolutely 1,000% serious that next week is our season recap, and we are going to be jumping into season 4 right after that.
Oh my, that went way too fast.
I know, right? It's crazy, huh? Just like that, 3 months, poof. Mm-hmm.
As I liked, no, I'm not going to say that.
No, go ahead. Say, you can say it. I'll bleep it. Or you can say.
One of my favorite sayings is it vanished like a fart in the wind.
Oh, that F word. It did. It did. But we have so many more ahead.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
All right. I'll see you next week.
Have a good one.
All right. Bye, babe.
Thanks so much for listening and for being part of the survivors community. No matter where you are in your story, you're not alone, and you're definitely not broken. Healing takes time, and it looks different for everyone. The fact that you're still here and still trying means you're already doing the hard work. If something in today's conversation resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it too. That's how we keep these conversations going and remind each other that there's always hope.
And if you or someone you know is struggling, please remember, help is always out there. You can call or text 988 anytime to reach a trained crisis counselor like me. And for more mental health resources, tools, treatment options, and content to support your mental health, visit thehelphub.co. We're so grateful you're part of the Survivors family, and we'll be back next week with another honest conversation about life after the hardest things. Until then, take care of yourself and your people, and keep surviving.